So imagine waking up tomorrow, and checking your phone,
Okay.
and you see that your bank account has just been completely deleted.
Oh, wow. Just gone.
Gone. And it's not just yours, right? Your boss's account is gone. The billionaires, their accounts are gone. The entire government structure as you know it has just vanished overnight.
That is a terrifying thought for most people. I mean, yeah.
Right. The immediate question is like, do you go out and help your neighbors plant crops and, organize the neighborhood, or do you start boarding up your windows because society is about to just collapse?
I feel like most people would board up the windows.
Oh, totally. But today's deep dive into our source material, it actually bets everything on that first option.
Yeah, we are looking at a really radical architectural blueprint for society today.
You really are. We're breaking down a philosophical dialogue from a text titled Episode 1067, Part 3, When the Alternative Becomes Real.
Right, and it's this fascinating debate between two figures, Nick and Maya. And they aren't just, complaining about inflation or corrupt politicians.
Yeah, they're way past that.
Exactly. They're sketching out the day-to-day practical mechanics of what they call the Infallible Society.
Which is such a bold name.
It is. It's a civilization operating entirely without a central ruler. And most shockingly for our modern brains, I think, completely without money.
Yeah, that's the part that really broke my brain. I love how this source text forces us to just look at our deepest assumptions. Because usually when we talk about fixing the world, we talk about tweaking the dials, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like lowering a tax rate here.
Right, or writing a new regulation there. And it's like remodeling a kitchen but leaving the rotting foundation of the house completely intact.
Yeah. Nick and Maya are basically bulldozing the house.
They are. But before we can even touch the whole no money aspect, which we will, we have to figure out how this society organizes human beings without, descending into a chaotic, apocalyptic wasteland.
Right, because that's the immediate fear.
Exactly. So Nick suggests dividing society into smaller, hyperlocal communities. We're talking groups of maybe 100, 200, maybe 500 people.
Yeah, and the exact number isn't like a hard scientific rule in their debate, but the guiding principle is proximity.
Okay, what do you mean by proximity?
Well, it means you keep the responsibility for a decision as close as possible to the people who will actually feel the consequences of that decision.
Oh, I see.
So if it's local water distribution or electricity maintenance, food production, early education, it is managed locally by that specific community.
Instead of some distant federal bureaucracy.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because it sounds lovely in theory, right? Like a giant neighborhood co-op.
Sure.
But they still need someone to run it. And when I read this part, my alarm bells just started ringing.
Why is that?
Well, think about it. In a corporate hierarchy, you have a CEO who dictates everything top down. But in a group project, everyone is supposedly pitching in equally. And we all know how group projects actually go.
Oh, yeah. One person does all the work.
Right. One person ends up doing all the heavy lifting, or, even worse, one person seizes control and just tries to boss everyone else around.
That's true.
So Nick says these communities use, he calls them coordinators or representatives instead of rulers.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to push back on the practicality here. Even in a tiny group of 500 people, what stops that coordinator from just seizing power? Doesn't breaking society into tiny fragments just create the risk of hundreds of little micro-dictatorships?
Like the world's most intense homeowners association.
Yes. An inescapable HOA. That sounds like a nightmare.
It does. But what's fascinating here is to understand how they prevent that micro-dictator scenario. We have to look at a crucial distinction Nick draws.
Okay.
He separates two concepts that we almost always conflate in our current world, which are authority and responsibility.
Authority and responsibility. Okay.
Right. So in our existing systems, a ruler possesses authority over people. They have the institutional power to command and compel obedience.
And that's usually backed by force, right? Like the police or the military.
Oh, exactly. But in the Infallible Society, a coordinator only has a responsibility toward the people. They are organizers. They are not commanders. They operate strictly on the ongoing active consent of the community.
I mean, words on paper are just words, though. A micro-dictator doesn't care about the dictionary definition of their job title.
Fair point.
If I'm the coordinator and I decide I want more power, how does the community actually stop me?
The safeguard is absolute immediate accountability, and that is facilitated by total transparency.
Immediate accountability. So not like an election.
No, exactly.
Maybe.
In this blueprint, The community doesn't have to wait 4 years for an election cycle to vote out a bad actor.
Right.
They don't have to appeal to some slow-moving, distant central government to come rescue them. The community itself has real-time access to the data of what the coordinator is doing.
Wait, real-time data?
Yes. So if that person abuses their responsibility, the community can instantly withdraw consent and replace them.
Instantly.
Yeah, it's not a recall election that takes 6 months of campaigning. It's an immediate structural pivot.
Okay, I get the theory, but mechanically, how does an instant recall not just devolve into mob rule on a Tuesday afternoon?
What do you mean?
Well, if I'm the coordinator and I make a tough but, necessary call about water rationing during a drought, does the mob just fire me because they're thirsty and mad?
Ah, I see. That is where the transparency of data becomes the absolute bedrock of the system.
Okay.
It isn't a shouting match in a town square based on rumors. The society relies heavily on objective metrics. The community can view the actual resource flows.
So they can see the reservoir levels themselves?
Exactly. The data showing the reservoir levels is essentially open source.
Oh, wow.
So the coordinator isn't making some secret backroom decision to ration water. They are executing a logistical necessity based on a transparent reality that everyone can see.
I see. So if a coordinator diverges from what the data dictates, say, they route extra water to their friends' houses or something.
Right. It's mathematically flagged by the system and reviewed by peers. The power isn't in the coordinator's charisma or authority. It is in the community's home's collective access to information.
So it completely shifts the structure of human society from like a pyramid with one person at the top hoarding all the information and giving orders to this flat, decentralized network of cooperating nodes.
It does. And when decisions scale up to affect multiple communities, say, building a high-speed rail line across 20 different regions.
Right. Who's in charge then?
Well, they don't default to a higher-up regional boss. They default to broader coordination among those specific community representatives.
Oh, so the representatives just talk to each other.
Yes. The system is fundamentally designed so that it doesn't require a morally perfect leader to function. You just design an architecture where no single individual has the mechanical leverage to do massive damage in the first place.
But wait, even with instant recall and open data, a corrupt coordinator still has a physical advantage, right?
How so?
If I am the person physically routing the water supply or managing the solar grids for my 500 neighbors, I have leverage. I can demand under-the-table favors.
No. Yes.
And the only way to permanently stop that leverage is to remove the currency used to pay for those favors. Which I think brings us to the most radical, brain-breaking feature Nick and Maya discuss.
The total deletion of money.
The total deletion of money.
This is where the thought experiment really pushes us the hardest. Nick points out that money is the ultimate converter.
The ultimate converter.
Right. It is the greatest source of concentrated influence because it is liquid power.
Liquid power. That's a good way to phrase it.
Yeah. They outline a very clear cycle of institutional corruption. It goes like this. Influence turns into political power. Political power dictates how institutions are run.
Right.
Those institutions control physical resources. And those resources generate more money, which then buys even more influence.
It is just an infinite feedback loop of hoarding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The cycle spins continuously until a tiny fraction of the population holds all the cards.
So Nick's argument is that if you remove money entirely, you starve that specific cycle of its primary fuel.
That's it. If someone in this infallible society tries to secretly hoard electricity or siphon off the community's water or, stockpile tons of grain, they hit an immediate logistical wall.
Because where do they sell it?
Right. To whom?
It's like stealing millions of tickets at an arcade where the prize counter has been permanently walled off and shut down.
That is a perfect analogy.
Like, what is the point of hoarding the paper tickets if you can't cash them in for the giant stuffed bear?
Exactly. What does wealth even mean in a society where a medium of exchange literally does not exist?
Right.
You cannot convert that hoarded grain into a bigger house or a private jet or political influence.
Yeah.
Because the conversion mechanism, the money, has been entirely deleted from reality.
I hear that, and I mean, the logic is sound on paper, but I have to challenge this.
Please do.
Removing money doesn't magically cure human selfishness. We have flawed creatures,
For sure.
Let's look at non-essential scarcity. The ocean view problem, I like to call it.
Okay, the ocean view problem.
Yeah. Even if everyone in the society is guaranteed healthy food, clean water, and a comfortable home, Somebody is going to want the house with the better view of the ocean.
Of course.
You cannot distribute ocean views equally. There is a finite amount of coastline. In our current system, the person with the most money just buys the beach house.
Right.
Without money, how does this system handle that kind of scarcity without people tearing each other apart out of pure jealousy?
Well, Maya brings up a very similar criticism in the dialogue, actually. She points out that removing money doesn't pretend to erase human desire. People will still want beautiful things.
How do they get them?
Think about how a system like Wikipedia operates today.
Okay, Wikipedia.
Wikipedia has incredibly scarce, highly valuable real estate, right? The front page or the top of a highly trafficked article.
Oh, absolutely.
In a corporate model, that space will be sold to the highest bidder for millions of dollars.
Sure.
But Wikipedia operates outside the monetary system. That scarce space is curated by consensus, by strict rules of utility, and by community moderation, not by who has the most cash.
So you're saying the beach house wouldn't be privately owned at all?
Most likely, yes. The concept of permanent private ownership of scarce communal resources fundamentally shifts here.
Oh, I see.
A house with a stunning ocean view might become a rotating community retreat or a shared creative space, or might be allocated based on a specific agreed-upon need rather than just inherited wealth.
So the transition here is moving from a society that asks, who can afford this, to a society that asks, what is the most logical, beneficial utilization of this resource for everyone?
Exactly. When you remove the monetary gatekeeper, the provision of essential and even non-essential goods relies purely on collective effort, physical resources, and planning.
So you look at the physical reality of the resources, like how much steel, how much wood, how many joules of energy, rather than the artificial reality of a budget.
The physical reality becomes the only reality. Access to life-sustaining resources becomes a basic privilege simply because you are human.
Wow.
Not because everyone is identical, but because everyone shares a baseline biological need to survive.
But see, if nobody's being paid and we are relying entirely on consensus and shared resources, we hit the ultimate friction point.
The trash.
The trash. Who takes out the trash? If I'm not getting a paycheck and I don't have the desperate looming fear of starvation and homelessness hanging over my head, what actually gets me out of bed in the morning to do the hard, physically exhausting work?
Right.
Maya points out that in our world, we automatically assume that no money means zero motivation.
Which perfectly illustrates how deeply money has colonized our psychology.
Oh, for sure.
We have completely internalized the idea that economic coercion, the threat of poverty, is the only valid engine for human activity.
But Nick pushes back on that.
He does. Nick counters this by listing intrinsic motivations that already exist all around us right now.
It's a really strong list.
Yeah.
He points out that parents care for their children without sending them an invoice for hours worked.
Right.
Scientists become obsessed with solving complex puzzles just for the thrill of the discovery.
Exactly. Open source developers build entire operating systems for free. People volunteer after natural disasters. They want purpose, they want to belong to a community, and they take pride in what they build. Right? Human motivation is vastly more complex than just financial compensation. We just currently live in a system that crushes those other motivations under the weight of survival.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. I see why a musician makes art for free,
Sure.
but I have to push hard on this biology versus environment debate. If you're listening to this deep dive on your commute right now, ask yourself, would you still be driving to your job today if your housing, healthcare, and food were permanently guaranteed?
Probably not all of us.
Exactly. What would you actually do with your Tuesday? Because while making music is fun, maintaining a sewer system is not.
No, it's not.
Who is waking up at 4 a.m. to haul away the garbage in the freezing rain? Are we biologically wired to only do those deeply unpleasant tasks if we are economically forced to?
Right. If you remove the threat of poverty, does the literal crap just start piling up in the streets?
Exactly.
That is the ultimate stress test of their entire theory.
Right.
To understand Nick and Maya's answer, we have to look at their concept of the generational feedback
A
loop.
generational feedback loop.
Yeah. Think of it almost like epigenetic inheritance in biology, where environmental stress can actually alter how genes are expressed in the next generation.
Oh, wow.
Right now, our current behavior, our greed, our hoarding, our reluctance to do hard work without a massive payout might just be a trauma response to the artificial scarcity of our economic environment.
Wait, so we act like we are starving because the system constantly threatens us with starvation?
Exactly that. Nick asks Maya to imagine a child growing up in the Infallible Society.
Mhm.
This child grows up knowing, implicitly, from the day they are born, I will always have food. I will always have health care. I have access to education.
Without question.
Right. And they know this without ever having to ask, how much money does my family have? That completely rewrites the psychological baseline of a human being.
The baseline shifts from anxiety to security.
And when everyone possesses that same basic security, the environmental conditions that breed intense envy, violent jealousy, and social resentment are massively reduced.
That makes sense.
Nick argues that the environment teaches us how to behave. Biology gives us a wide range of potentials. We can be incredibly selfish, or we could be incredibly cooperative.
Right, we have both in us.
The environment selects which of those biological potentials gets expressed and rewarded. If the environment changes, the lessons change. If the lessons change, the behavior changes.
And if that behavior changes across an entire generation, the culture itself evolves.
Exactly. Then that new culture builds new institutions, which reinforce a new environment, and the loop continues upward.
Okay, so to answer the question about the garbage collection and the sewers.
Right. Maya and Nick are betting that if you remove the sheer panic of survival, people will step up to do necessary tasks because the culture genuinely values collective well-being.
It's no longer a humiliating job forced upon an economic underclass.
Right. It's a shared civic duty. Perhaps technology and automation handle the most dangerous parts of the sanitation system.
Yeah, we have robots for a lot of things now.
Exactly. Or perhaps the community rotates the unpleasant duties, like chores in a shared house. The core belief is that our current laziness and greed are not fixed biological facts. They are symptoms of the specific economic game we are currently forced to play.
That is a massive high-stakes bet on human potential.
It really is.
But what happens when humans do what humans do best, which is fail?
Oh, we will fail.
Right. We make bad calls, we miscalculate the crop rotation, a piece of crucial technology breaks down. They call this the Infallible Society, which honestly sounds a bit terrifying.
It gives off utopian vibes, which can be scary.
Yeah, history shows us that any group of people claiming to have built a perfect, flawless utopia usually ends up building a very polite, well-manicured prison.
Maya presses Nick on that exact point. The word infallible is loaded with dangerous historical baggage.
Definitely.
But Nick redefines the word entirely for this blueprint. In this context, infallible does not mean people won't make mistakes.
It doesn't.
No. It doesn't mean humans suddenly become perfect, enlightened angels with no conflicts. It means the society is explicitly architected so that mistakes are always discoverable and correctable.
Discoverable and correctable. It sounds like they are taking the scientific method and applying it directly to human governance.
That is the exact mechanism.
Yeah.
Science doesn't claim to know everything.
Right.
Science says, here is our hypothesis. Let's run the test, observe the real-world results, examine the data, and if the results don't match the hypothesis, we correct our understanding. Exactly. Nick wants society to operate with that same humble, iterative attitude. If a method for distributing food fails, study why it failed. If a community invents a more efficient way to purify water, the entire network adopts it.
Wait, it's the open source software model applied to human survival?
Yes.
A piece of open source software isn't called infallible because the original code was flawless on day one. I mean, day one code is usually full of bugs.
Absolutely.
It becomes infallible because there are thousands of engaged, independent users constantly hunting for those bugs, flagging them, and writing patches to fix them.
That is a brilliant analogy.
The system survives and improves because it is transparent and entirely open to correction by anyone looking at the code.
And it highlights a fundamental warning Nick gives in the text.
What's that?
For an open source society to survive, the users, the citizens, must remain hyper-involved. Nick warns of a very specific danger. If ordinary people surrender their responsibility to a central system, even a perfectly benevolent, well-intentioned system that provides all their needs eventually, they stop thinking.
They just switch off their brains, consume the resources, and obey.
And once a population stops questioning the mechanics of their world, the system becomes incredibly dangerous no matter how utopian it started out.
Wow.
The real protection in the infallible society isn't finding a flawless coordinator to run things. The ultimate safeguard is an informed population, transparent information, and heavily distributed responsibility.
But that raises a fascinating question about the nature of power.
How so?
If the coordinators don't possess actual authority, and there is no money in existence to hoard or use as leverage, where does the power actually sit? Who holds it?
Maya realizes the answer to this during their debate. She observes that the greatest power in the infallible society isn't held by any single person, or even a council.
Then who?
The ultimate power is the collective ability of the people to question the system.
The collective ability to question that completely flips how we understand our role in society.
It forces a total redefinition of the concept of freedom, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because in our modern money-driven world, we often equate freedom with consumer choice. You know, you are free because you can walk into a supermarket and choose between 40 different brands of cereal.
Right. Or you are free because you can choose to leave one corporation and sell your labor to a different corporation.
Freedom as a menu of prepackaged products.
Exactly. But Nick and Maya argue for a much deeper, more demanding definition of freedom.
Okay.
True freedom is architectural. It is the ability to actively participate in shaping the environment in which you live.
Not just picking from what's already there.
Right. If people can collectively debate, design, and decide how their local community functions, they are no longer just consumers trapped inside a system built by dead men. They are the active, living creators of their own reality.
It adds the difference between being a passenger on a luxury cruise ship where your only freedom is picking the buffet options versus being part of the crew that actually steers the ship and plots the course.
I love that. Yes.
And Nick makes it clear in the text that this theoretical island they are discussing is just the beginning. The real experiment isn't about how they mix the concrete or lay the water pipes. The profound experiment is observing what actually happens to the human soul when the environment radically shifts.
Because, fundamentally, we don't know. We can debate biology versus environment in a studio all day long.
Right.
But as Maya concludes, this is a question that cannot be answered by philosophical arguments. It has to be experienced.
Yeah.
It has to be built, observed, measured, improved upon, and eventually judged by the actual lived results in the real world.
So, to recap this incredible blueprint we've been exploring,
Let's do it.
Nick and Maya are proposing a society that dismantles the top-down pyramid of power and replaces it with a decentralized, flat network of hyper-local communities. They propose abolishing money entirely to permanently starve the cycle of institutional corruption. They are betting heavily that intrinsic human motivations like purpose, pride, and community are vastly stronger than economic fear, especially when the environment guarantees basic survival.
Right.
And finally, they treat society not as a finished, static utopia, but as an endless, correctable, open-source scientific experiment.
It is a thought experiment that really forces you to examine your own daily life.
It really does.
Think about your motivations, your anxieties, your career choices, and even your relationships. How many of them are dictated, either directly or indirectly, by the monetary gatekeeper?
Almost all of them, probably.
Right. If that gatekeeper were permanently removed, who would you actually be? It forces us to ask whether we are currently living as truly free individuals or just highly functioning participants in an inherited cycle of influence and artificial scarcity.
That is a heavy, necessary thing to sit with. And I want to leave everyone listening with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day. The entire framework of the Infallible Society relies completely on an engaged, informed population. It requires citizens who are constantly participating, monitoring the data, questioning the coordinators, and correcting the system.
Constant vigilance.
Right. But let's be deeply honest about human nature. We get tired.
We do.
We get distracted by our hobbies, our personal dramas, our desire to just, relax on a Sunday. If this utopian structure demands our constant, unwavering civic vigilance just to survive, what happens when a generation simply experiences participation fatigue? What happens when people decide that going to endless community meetings to debate water distribution algorithms is just too much work and they'd rather let someone else make the decisions again?
Oh, wow.
Does the demand for absolute architectural civic freedom eventually become its own kind of exhausting burden? Something to think about as you navigate the systems we live in today. Until next time.